right, so this is the Sharper Process webinar. All right, so we're just gonna go through it. Went a little too fast there. So get to know us. So I think a lot of people have met us through certain calls and whatnot. Probably majority know David as well. But I'm Derek Coffey, currently CEO of Sharper Process. I'm the main procedure consultant for Sharper Process. And to my left, David, want to introduce yourself?
My name is David Cowling. I'm the COO, and I focus on the process side. So that's what we're going to dive into today. I'm excited to hopefully bring some value and answer some questions. The more questions, the better. I get to hear myself talk all day, so I'd rather hear from you guys.
All right. And we got some fancy pictures of us, obviously super candid. All right, going to the next one. So first, before we get into understanding processes, we want to go into why processes might fix some of the problems that you are not maybe aware of. So problems you may be experiencing due to missing or poor processes. So, and really for us, processes are a constant cycle of evolution. So you might be at a state where you have nothing, and you might be at a state where you're trying to continue to improve, and that's okay, right? So that's why we're here, trying to learn as much as we can. But some key bullet points here: no clear direction for the team. It's always a problem. Inconsistency on steps that are being done. Everyone's got their own method, right? Struggle with identifying and breaking down roles. Usually when you first start off, you are the person that knows everything, right? And so that can be really tough for a lot of people going into this process development is, oh, I have this department doing all these steps. It's like, no, you have these little roles in this department doing these steps that you need to identify, right? Because people are overwhelming themselves at the start. And that's what we want to help fix and identify. So got a minute meetings, that's always important, right? If we can fix that.
Sorry, David, we can barely hear you.
Oh, is that
all
me?
right?
We're all blowing up the chat, but I don't think you guys can. We can hear Derek. We can't hear David.
All right, I know you really want to hear me, so we'll make sure we get that fixed.
So you can hear David?
We can hear David fine. It's actually Derek, you went on like half volume when you started talking.
That's weird. You let me know when it gets better. We definitely appreciate the patience and the engagement.
This was actually a trick just to see if people would use the chat function, so I appreciate. Yeah, I can keep going here. So I'll pick up a little bit while we're getting Derek's mic fixed. But basically he's covering some problems by not having processes or by having out-of-date processes. So there's no clear direction. Obviously, that's a problem you've probably experienced before. We're not really sure what to do. And more importantly, our employees, right? And maybe more specifically, our employees aren't sure what they're supposed to be doing. There's inconsistency because we're doing things a different way every time, right? We don't have one set process. It's going to give us inconsistent results, and it's very difficult to plan and to track based off of inconsistent results. We can also, what Derek was talking about when we figured out his volume was low, is that we can struggle with identifying the different seats that we sit in, with the different roles that we're involved in within the business. It's a big point when we talk about the process maps. It's essential to use the swim lanes, which we'll get into. But I really want you to figure out how many different seats do you sit in within the organization so that we can figure out what to delegate first, right? Delegation should not just be, oh, well, I'm tired of doing this step, so here, somebody take that task, and oh, I got tired of this one, throw that one somewhere and you take that now. It should be very intentional, right? Hey, I'm delegating this specific role, right? I'm no longer a lead manager. I'm no longer a project manager or the sales or whatever it may be. So we want to help you identify the role, not just the person. All right, then got-a-minute meetings are often caused by no process because we don't know what to do. So, hey, can I ask you what's going on? You have a second, and then it takes, an hour, and we're focused on something that's not the highest and best use of our time. Do you want to test if you're back?
Yeah, you guys want, how do I sound now? Everyone, yeah, perfect, thumbs up. We had changed the batteries before this call, but those batteries were deceptive and defective. So they were good now. All right, yeah, but continue down. I think, did you do that right column? Are we good there? All right, so the right column, best for last. Expectations not being met, right? Because, a lot of times we hire someone on, we get them in the game, and all of a sudden it's like, we don't think they're performing, right? Well, it could be due to bad processes or a lack of processes, right? So we want to make sure those are documented so that we can set those expectations and they have some type of concrete answer to why we expect something. So then going to no foundation for procedures, policies, and KPIs. As we'll get into, the overview and path of processes and the importance of them is to get to that point, right? And so if we have processes, we are setting the foundation for us to continue to develop on top of them and continue to do more research into those processes. And, you know, last two, everything lives in your head. That I think we've already kind of gone over, but you start to really realize that because I didn't do the processes, because I can't do the procedures, everything that I've been documenting and helping people understand was living in my head, and we're trying to create that better world for you, right? So, and then the last one, unidentifiable waste. If we don't document what we're doing and lower our ego enough to actually say, hey, is this even worth my time or a client's time or whatever it is? Should I be doing it? The answer sometimes could be no, right? But we don't know that until we document our processes. So these are just some key high-level issues or problems that maybe we run into or have, all because we don't have processes, right? So we just want to set the tone, because that's what we want to look for, right? As we get through this webinar, we want everyone to be on the same page with what should be the takeaways, which is one, how can I document my first process or get into a better level of process mapping for me and my team? And then two, understanding where this is going to take us, why we're doing this, so that we can then have a good flow and expectation for the new year, right? Because that's why we did it on December. So, hey, we got, you know, everyone's trying to do some business resolutions. So if we can have that be some processes, then we're going to be A-okay. All right. So going into the next one here, I think it skipped a little faster. So the path to business foundation starts with processes, right? So the next one in that, so process mapping. I don't know, Dave, if you want to talk about this, and then I can talk about the things that follow after that.
Yeah, so with process mapping, a few things right off the bat. One, it's going to be a visual, and you can see of how the company flows, but we want to get an idea of what's the end goal, right? Let's zoom out. Let's let everyone see the big picture. Let's figure out how our processes fit together. We're going to do that with an overview, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But we want to have that visual. We mentioned that things just live in your head. And when that's the case, it's very difficult to solve a problem that exists totally within your own head, right? For a few reasons. One, because no one else can help, right? Because it's only in your own head, right? It can be very tangled. Maybe you all have super well organized minds and neural pathways. Mine are not always that way. So when we identify an issue, it's just kind of, oh, well, there's a problem, and we try and pull it apart, and it takes forever, and it's not as efficient. And sometimes we end up solving problems that weren't really problems, right? It's not really the root cause. So once we have a visual, we'll be able to see exactly, okay, this worked, that worked, this did not, there's my problem, right? We can zoom in a lot better. It's also going to help identify the hats or roles or seats or whatever term you'd like that everyone's responsible for, right? Understanding, hey, I have 4 different seats inside this business. Which one's the most important? Which one has to get done? How much time am I spending in each? We're going to also base this around the SIPOC or cash conversion cycle or your customer journey or whatever term you like for it. There's a lot of things that are synonyms there. We'll document your core processes, which is what makes up your cash conversion cycle. Within our processes, it's also going to let us know and have specific and tailored key performance and key process indicators, right? Those are both going to come and should come directly from your processes. To start out with, highly recommend, type in online, what are the best KPIs for fill in the blank industry, right? That's way better than nothing, but that's not where we should stay, right? Because you're tracking indicators that are for somebody else's business. All right, and once we dial in the processes, then we can see, okay, here's exactly what numbers really matter to my process. Here's what shows efficiency and effectiveness. All right, also, once we build this out, like I said, we start really high level, we're going to zoom in further and further. All right, you start with that overview, you zoom in a little bit, and we work on the specific processes. Then, and really only then, should you start on the procedures and on the SOPs. Right? People love starting with SOPs, and we have like this niche thing, this exception happened and it went wrong. So let's create an SOP for it, and great, right? But then it's almost always a Google Drive somewhere that is, not really organized. It's just this random collection of Google Docs or Word documents that don't really fit together. Everyone hates looking at, and the only guaranteed thing about them is that they're never ever used. All right, when we have everything built correctly and in the right system, now we have an easy foundation to build procedures off of that makes sense, that fits together, and that's easy to follow along with.
Right. You guys go.
Yeah,
KPIs.
so KPIs, right? I mentioned this a little bit. Each process is going to end with your performance indicator when we build it correctly. We'll get into that more in a minute. Process indicators come from within the process. They give us an idea of how it's going. There's a few things that you may want to look at and consider as we're doing KPIs. And again, I'll show you this more in a minute, but it could be the overall timeline, right? That's what's going to make up your conversion cycles, your cycle times. It could be a percentage, a performance percentage, a conversion rate, whatever the case may be there. And also we might want to know the raw data, right? Like how many leads came in, how many sales did we make? How long did it take to get that lead? And what percentage of those leads were qualified, right? That's the example there. We're going to use weekly and daily stoplight reports for the different metrics. We'll talk a little about that. We'll probably talk more about that in one of the future webinars that we do. And it's going to help us. A big part of process mapping, right? There's a lot of functionality, but a really big thing that we'd like to emphasize, we really need to set expectations for ourselves and for our employees and our coworkers, right? For new hires, they need to know what success looks like. And when we have the process built out, we can tell them what they need to do. Have procedures built out or in-person training or whatever you use now. That's how you tell them how to do it. The KPIs are what tell them how often, what's the true measure of success. If I do this X number of times a day or X number of times a week, that's what's going to let us know, hey, we succeeded. I did my job satisfactorily this week. So the KPIs, it all fits together, but they're very important. Hopefully you understand that, and that's why you're here.
Yeah, and I hope you guys are kind of picking up too. These webinars, it's not just going to be one and done. This path that we're explaining is actually going to be the path that we're going to follow for future webinars in place. So depending on where you're at and stage of your business, you can expect that. I think some people have already signed up for the one on January 4th. That'll be covering most KPIs and most of identifying roles and things like that. So getting to more of my side of the field here. So procedures and business curriculums, we use Trainio as a software for that. That doesn't matter, right? The biggest thing that you want to have in this case is a complete overview of my role, right? If I'm coming in, if I'm going to be a new hire in your team, what is it that I need to know to be able to perform and be successful? And so the thing that we get from these processes is this compilation of steps that that person is going to follow, right? And so if we can then create the procedures for those steps, make it a little bit intuitive, make it like a curriculum based to where we start a high level, we start breaking into the core functions that they're going to be doing and using to be able to have a successful career at our business, right? Because usually what people do is, we have a 3-month onboarding program. And it's like, why do you take 3 months, right? Try and train everything and document everything you can for this training so that when someone goes through it, it's quick and easy. They have it as a resource. They don't feel bad for asking you questions or listening to something again. And so that's where the procedures come in, right? We get the job descriptions. We get that complete view of the team that I need to know and how it's operating. Explain that to me. We are going to be able to upload that to a knowledge management system of any kind. So someone doesn't have to go to that Google Drive of files and just sort through everything and hopefully they find it, right? And hopefully it's up to date. So that's where using an actual system is going to be key to make sure that things are on a scheduled basis. And you don't have to try so hard to make something that's not effective for that case work. Company orientation, policies, procedures off those processes, and then using all three of those to cross-train anybody on the team that's trying to learn a new position, transition, or even just cover for someone, right? It's a backup. It always is. So if we can develop our processes and develop those into procedures, we're going to have a better time as a company and everyone's going to be on the same page. So just look for this in the future of why, like anytime you think, why am I doing this process of steps? It's so simple. It's so stupid. I hate this. First off, you're wrong. But secondly, think bigger picture, think of why this is going to help the future and then go forward, right? So, and on the last one, or last two here, one that me and David start getting excited about is because it's getting very advanced, right? Once we have our processes all dialed in, we have all of our KPIs dialed in, everyone knows the expectation and how to do it, you can start getting really lean, right? And that's through time studies. And so the way we do time studies, and again, I want you guys to think of this and then never think of it again, until you have all your processes done.
Just use this to get excited about what's eventually possible.
Exactly. Think about it. When we have time studies, we can start really understanding what is possible with a certain team member and what we expect out of those team members. We take those expectations, we throw some spreadsheets, we throw some formulas on it, and we start getting the most out of someone we can. The return on our employee is becoming higher because we're tracking it and we're helping them and protecting them based off of their capacity. Because if someone's working extremely hard and we validated how much time they're putting into it, and their whole day is just filled with nonstop tasks, and then there's someone else flying by with just doing half of that, there's a problem, right? People are going to feel unseen and then taken advantage of. So we use these capacity time studies to be able to protect us and protect them, right? And so that's where processes will take us eventually, but it takes a lot of work to get there, right? So it is cool. It's a great tool. We can go over understanding what's essential and non-essential, efficiency versus effectiveness, which I think some of you probably heard the CG analogy, whatever. And then productivity, right? So that'll be good there. And then
somebody else jumping in, Jake.
Talk about revenue predicting. I think.
Yeah. So then as we dial this in, this is when we can become a lot more accurate with our projections, right? And with our goal setting, because we'll know, hey, here's what our performance indicators are. Here's our process indicators all the way up, especially if you have time studies, you can know, how many work hours it should take to complete the different projects. So if we're going to grow by 30%, well, here's what that looks like. Here's how many employees we need to hire. Here's how much additional training. Here's how much we're going to have to spend on marketing. And they can get extremely dialed in. We're not going to jump into a lot of detail here, right? Because we'll save that for another time. We want to go one at a time, but this is where we want to help you get to, right? So if processes aren't your thing, that's okay. That's why people like us exist. A few of you probably like it. Some of you probably don't, but it's going to be necessary one way or the other, right? So if you have to just, grit your teeth and make yourself get through it, know that there is a worthwhile end goal. We're going to get to those productivity studies. We'll get to the revenue and make your goal setting and help you get to, what your ultimate vision is a lot better and a lot quicker.
All right.
Cool.
So now we're going to transition into David really showing us everything we need to know about processes, especially in getting started with them. This slide will be the last one you see just for now, and we're going to transition to him teaching off the vibe board. So as we go into documenting your first process, the top 3 things we want to know is starting high level, understanding the shapes, and the swim lanes, right? Dave will probably speak way more to that. I'm just helping intro him because he's about to talk. But if anybody has any questions too, I'll be on the computer looking at those. I'll actually be paying attention this time while David talks. So I think we'll just start transitioning over to that one and then get it going.
All right. So this is our ultra fancy vibe board.
Hopefully they can.
Okay, so I'll zoom in. Don't worry. We'll zoom in and get
second.
closer.
And then
looks like Derek's going to share as well.
Yeah, if you can.
But what we want to do, this needs to be as easy as possible, right? We're not trying to make this complicated. Process maps can get, I think that's one of the reasons they get a bad rap, is because somebody who didn't really know what they were doing or was trying to prove that they knew so much what they were doing that they just made it seem extremely complicated and difficult. That's not how it should be, right? We're going to start simple and we're going to create what's called an overview, right? Now, this is just a sample like wholesale. There's, several different ones. We'll see how much we actually get into that. But for example, again, using real estate wholesale, typically this is your cash conversion cycle. You got marketing, you got to qualify the lead, acquire the property, dispo the property, and then take care of all the title and get it to closing. All right. So it's very simple, very basic. That's why we use it here. Whatever your business is, there's probably some sort of marketing, there's some sort of sales, and then there's whatever your operations are. Right? We want to keep this, again, as simple as possible. We'll break it down. Eventually, we'll be talking about SOPs, right? And we'll get through all those nitty-gritty details. But this does not need to be super difficult. Let me zoom in a little bit more just to make sure everyone can see this. All right, here's an example. This is like property management. Start with onboarding. This one, instead of kind of an end, there's usually a cycle, and it continues to go with renewing, or we take the property and we go back to list it. Zoom in more. All right, let's go to this one. Let's say this is real estate. Sorry, these are mostly real estate examples on this one, but is zoomed in enough there? Yeah. All right. So you can see if you have multiple exit strategies, this is what it might look like. This is just an example, not saying you need to change everything to fit this. There's marketing, qualifying, acquisitions. Then let's say you have some sort of deal review, because now you might be purchasing the property. We need a more in-depth deal review process to approve the exit strategy, right? And then based on the exit strategy we select, it might be wholesale, F&F is fix and flip. At least that's the shorthand I use. Novations, rentals, whatever the case may be. All right, but this shows us step by step at a pretty high level what's going to happen in the business. Where are we going? Right now, we're not talking about eventually we'll get to like your HR processes. I didn't hear anybody cheer. I don't usually get a lot of excitement about that one. That's okay. We'll save those for later, right? We want to start with those core processes, right? What gets us from money in to money out, right? Marketing dollars spent, closed and funded, we got paid at the end. That's where I'd like you to start. So part of what I'm going to push you to do, I am going to give you some homework, right? So action items with this today. This isn't just going to be me getting up here and talking. One more person in, Derek. Not just going to be me talking. I really like you to do something with this, right? So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to create an overview, right? You don't have to do it this second, but make yourself a note. I'll remind you of it again later, but figure out, what do you think your overview looks like? If it's not perfect, that's okay. Let's just get started. Okay, so let's figure out, let's identify, what do we think this overview is going to look like? But this is where I want you to start. Again, let's go back for a second. This is if you try to do this yourself, this is probably what happened. You zoomed in, right? And in and in. It doesn't let me zoom in any more than that. Right? And you tried to build an SOP, right? For one specific, here's how I want you, to send to open title. Right, we built this one specific SOP. That's one step in one process when we really would like to figure out what needs to happen for the whole company. Okay, now once you've done this, right, in order to start your first process, build out this overview. Then whatever software you use, we use LucidChart. I don't really care which one you pick, as long as it's easy to use for you, go with that. But then I don't want you to use every single shape. Right? Regardless of what software you pick, there's a ton of different shapes you can do. There's a lot of all this like really intricate stuff. You don't need all that. Okay. For certain situations, eventually you could probably convince me, maybe, right? I'm still not even convinced on that. But what I want you to do is I want you to start with 4 basic shapes. We're going to make this as simple as possible. First, you can see we got the Terminator. All right. If you want to say that in your best Arnold voice, you have full permission to do so. Okay, that's the pill-shaped thing. There's no action that takes place inside of a Terminator. All right, this just lets us know, hey, the process started or the process ended. It's like a portal in and out of the process. Or if you like this better, if you ever played, like the original Mario, the Terminator is the green tube at the end of the map, right? Because you jump into the green tube and it takes you directly to the next map or the next level. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. Those processes are going to be linked together by the Terminators. All right, well, I won't go into a lot of detail yet. This is also where we're going to find our key performance indicators if we do this correctly. All right, because, and this is just a blank example, so don't worry if you can't make out the words. It's like that on purpose. But if we do this correctly, we're going to end in that Terminator, and that lets us know, hey, the process won today. All right, that's a key performance indicator. Check, process 1, it performed. That's where we get performance indicator. All right, shape 2. Let's go back over here. This is the rectangle, all right, or a process box. This is where action happens. Now, anytime there's an action, I want it to go into this, all right? That's as straightforward as we need to be, okay? All the action goes in here. We like to say, what's the difference between process and procedure? Well, process is what you do, procedure is how you do it, right? That's kind of the rule of thumb. All of the what's that we do get their box, right? And then we keep on moving. An example of this, well, what's too detailed? The one I usually like to give is I might put inside this box, update the CRM. I am not going to put enter contact's first name, enter contact's last name, enter address, enter phone number, enter email address. You're all already bored, and I was just talking and saying it out loud, right? We don't need that level of detail. That's procedural, right? So the step might be update the CRM. The procedure will have a short video. Hey, here's how you update the CRM, right? Here's how you navigate that. That's a separate thing. Okay, so process, we document all of the what's that we do. This is where the action happens. Shape number 3, right? We're over halfway there. Congratulations. Shape number 3, we have the diamonds, right? And these are used for decisions, as you can see. So anywhere we need to ask ourselves some sort of question, the process may split here, right? Or we really can't continue until, we follow up with this one person and make sure that they've signed the contract or whatever the case may be. Whenever there's some sort of diamond, we're asking a yes or a no question, all right? Whatever is more efficient, right? Whatever's the better option is going to continue on to the right. Whatever's less efficient is going to go a different direction, whether it's up, down, or backwards. Okay. So when you're building this, efficiency moves to the right, inefficiency moves down. Some people argue about this. I don't think it matters if yes or no goes to the right, because what happens is then you start using double negatives so that your yeses still go to the right because you want that efficient option. Just make whatever's efficient go right, whether it's yes or no. We're going to come back and talk about that in more detail in a minute. Remember those diamonds. All right, next, the last shape that I think you need for now is this one, right? And this is a box with double bars on it. This is a predefined process or a sub process. Okay, this just shows that, hey, sorry, Dylan, one more person. Hey, we've already documented this process. We're going to look at this separately. An example of this is follow-up. Okay, we don't need to document the entire follow-up process on this same document, right? It's going to make us lose track of where we're at. The process is going to become overly complicated. It's going to look huge. It's going to be very messy, and it's going to be hard to read because we lost focus. Okay, so when we start to enter a sub process, an ulterior process, whatever, use this shape. We'll document that separately. The other advantage to this is, again, let's say follow-up. You probably have a lot of places where follow-up might start. So you can either document the same thing like 8 or 10 or 20 times, or you can document it once and reference it with the shape each time. All right. Now we've talked about your 4 shapes. You all have so much information now. Congratulations. I'm sure this is all brand new. No, but there's a couple more things I want to show you, right? And these are some common mistakes that I see made. All right. First, you'll notice, right, I zoomed out a little bit here. Everything is inside of a pool, right? So like POOL, that kind of pool. All right, and that's what they call it in most of the softwares. And they're going to be split by swim lanes. So you can see on this example, right, we have 2. There's one there, and then there's the lower one. That's the second swim lane. Right now, I don't care what you call it. Right. Again, I'm gonna stick with swim lane for now. But what we need to do with these swim lanes is we need to identify which role is completing these tasks, right? And when we move to a different role, right, I need you to go to a different swim lane, right, to show that, hey, there's multiple roles involved. Now, especially if you're doing the entire process, but you're wearing different hats while you do it, this might feel a little bit schizophrenic, okay? But I need you to identify, hey, this is me as the lead manager. This is me as the sales rep. All right, I need you to identify the different roles that you're doing. Down the line, this is what's going to help you create a job description that makes sense. This is what is going to help you know what to train for. Okay, so identify and use the swim lanes. Okay, now look, everybody, I don't know why. Everybody always thinks that it's going to be better if they color code it and they just have one string of boxes all the way across. That does not work, right? I really wish it did, because for whatever reason, everybody tries it. Please don't do that. Again, I'm not sure why. It just does not work. Don't, like, if you want to use color coding for other stuff, fine, but don't do that for the position. The other reason that you do that, though, is because now every time I see that it crosses a line, I know that there has to be some sort of notification to get it to the new person, right? So I know that I'm missing an email, or I need to tag in the CRM, or I need to do something in order so that this person knows what they're doing. The other thing that does is every time I cross, oh, there we go. Every time I cross a swim lane, there's time lost, right? And if you have a process that goes up and down and up and down, it's going to be a very slow, inefficient process, right? So that's one of the things that we'll go through. And as we get to refinement eventually, we want to reduce the amount of times we have to cross swim lanes. If you have a situation where it does need to go back and forth a bunch of times, that's when you should call a meeting, right? Because now we're in person, there's not time lost, we stay focused, we get it over with. right? But every time you cross a line, there's going to be time lost, right? Because well, hopefully at least, your employees or you, I'm not just waiting on you to send me an email to tell me what you to do, right? I'm doing other things. I'm involved in other work, right? So I'm not going to respond to that email right away, and neither are you. So we need to take that into consideration as we're building out the processes. Let me see if I can erase all this effectively. There we go. All right. Now, a couple more things, and then we'll continue on with some different stuff, and we may get to some questions in a minute. You'll also notice with the process maps, it doesn't need to be difficult, and you don't have to use the same formatting I do, but you do want to be very intentional with the way that you format the map, right? I go as linear as possible, right? I want the ideal process to be a straight line left to right. If it switches swim lanes, you can see it's a straight line, and then it's a straight line. That's what I'm trying to stick to, right? Because mentally and visually, when we look at this, we can see, okay, that's the goal. Right, what that does, and this is why I told you we talk about decisions more. Whenever we get a down arrow, right, a less efficient option, now we have extra work. That's inefficiency that we would like not to have to do. So it highlights where we don't want to go. So for instance, in this, again, blank example, every time we get a note of this decision, I have an extra 1, 2, 3 steps, right? 2 of them are rework, so I have to redo something. 1's a new step. All right, so that's 3 extra steps every single time. I would much rather not do those steps, right? And that's actually why we're going to find our key process indicators inside of our diamonds. Okay, that's the decisions. That lets us know, because those are the indicators. Hey, are we on track or not? Right? Are we going to hit our deadlines or no? We'll talk more about KPIs another time in more detail, right? Because I don't want to shortchange that or the process side. But your performance indicators is essentially wins and losses. That doesn't tell you, every metric really is a lag metric, right? But that's a very steep lag metric. It usually takes like at least 3 weeks for us to decide to do anything about our key performance indicators. All right, we'll get into more why of that another time. So you need something that tells you a lot sooner than 3 weeks, right? Because if we have 3 weeks of poor performance, that's really, we're going to feel that throughout our cash conversion cycle for several months in most companies, right? In most instances. If we have a 5-month cash conversion cycle, we're going to feel those 3 poor weeks for the next 5 months. All right, so the sooner we can identify a problem, the better. All right, now I want you to see this, because to me, this is exciting. If you don't like this, then I don't know what's wrong with you. As you go through, right, traditionally what happens when we're trying to solve problems, right? Probably we're sitting, okay, let's say worst case scenario. We don't do quarterlies. It's at the end of the year. Hey, we didn't, seems like we should have had more profit. All right, we're low. We didn't get where we'd like to get. What did we do wrong? It's probably sales, right? That's kind of what everybody goes to. Well, we didn't make enough money. We didn't get enough sales. That's kind of the default. We reconfigure our sales department. We blow everything up. We fire everybody, or we hire a bunch of new people, and we hope it fixes the problem. Okay, when you have these set up, right, this can give you a lot of insight into exactly where the problem lies. Okay, when we have everything tracked this way and you're tracking based on your process, what that does is it shows you, okay, we spent the same amount of dollars on marketing, right? So let's go back to this. We're going to go to this one. All right, so let's say we spent the same amount of money on marketing, right? So the same thing starts it off, same amount goes in, right? We got the same amount of leads. Okay, great. That means marketing does not appear to be the issue. Okay, we got the same amount of qualified leads, even better, right? Everything seems to be going great, right? Acquisition, right? Sorry, we're picking on sales again. Let's say we have less contracts signed. Okay, well, that tells us if we have less contract signs, we need to examine things deeper inside acquisitions, because that's probably where we're going off the rails, right? It's possible once we get to acquisitions, we'll find that we had false numbers before because our qualification changed. Now I'm getting into the weeds, but we can see exactly where the problem lies, right? It's within acquisitions. Then we zoom in, right? Back to this, let's say it's an acquisitions process, right? So that starting number, right? Leads received or appointment set or whatever it is, that's the same, right? This is low. When we have our KPIs tracked, it lets us see exactly where we went off the rails. So let's say, same number of appointments set, so we're good there. We got the same number of confirmed appointments, or I'm making up stuff now. And right here, right, we have way fewer offers accepted. Okay, then that lets us know, okay, so we're missing within these 3 steps. That's where my problem lies. That's where I need to dive in and I need to fix it. So very quickly, you can identify, hey, here's the problem. Here's what I need to fix. Here's how we can split test to improve the process and get us back on track quickly. Also, when you're tracking KPIs, the way that we'll recommend, you should find out that these, poor process numbers are happening within less than a week, right? So if it's Thursday and Monday through Wednesday have been bad, that's when you should find out. And we can jump back in, fix the process.